We're Tetem and Aleph. Tetem and Aleph is a Mishnah at the top of the page. And the good news for those who missed last week, this was an extremely hard piece of Gemara last week. Who was here last week?
Some of us.
Some of us. It was. Well, you're good, because you missed a very difficult piece of Gemara. We had to deal with Nazir, and had to deal with Karbanos, and Tuma, and Tahara, and the two shells were very difficult. But the good news is, it goes back to the piece we're going to do now is a new piece, and goes back to what the Mishnah that we have in Tet Aleph. So we're going to read the Mishnah again and jump into the piece of Gemara. So Tet Aleph says, and the tough piece last week was on the first two lines of the Mishnah, and you see how it ties in. A person didn't bring the korban Chagiga on the first day of Yantif, the first day of the Regal, which is like the first day of Pesach, the first day of Sukkot. Chogeget kol ha-regal means you can not just celebrate, you bring the korban Chagiga. That's the celebration, was bringing the korban Chagiga, the entire rest of the Yantiv, and even including the last days of Sukkot, which is normally Shmini Atzeres and considered to be a different holiday. That's still a makeup day of the first day of Sukkot. And that was the whole Gemara, why that would be a makeup day of the first holiday of Sukkot. You weren't really chayiv and so forth. And then the Gemara had a whole discussion. What if you weren't obligated on the first day, but you became obligated on the second day? Let's say a person was lame on the first day and he became unlame on the second day. Could that be now making up for the first day when you weren't chayiv or not? That was the whole discussion, which we're not going to go again because it was just so tough. And then al bar regal v'lo chag, if the yantif passed and you didn't bring the korban chagiga, enav chav chav bechuyuto, you're not obligated to make it up, which means really you missed your opportunity. Now that being obligated to make it up sounds like it's a good news, right? You're off the hook. That means you missed the hook, okay? You missed the opportunity. And that's the part we're going to talk about now. Al zen nemar, muvas lo yichal liskan, v'chesron lo yichal limano. Something which is crooked, you can't straighten up. The chesron, and that which is missing, that which is missing can't be counted, can't be enumerated, can't be considered part of the count. So there's a pasuk in Koheles. Koheles talks a lot about life. This is one of the more famous pasukim of Koheles because of this Mishnah, and therefore says the Mishnah that one example of what Koheles was talking about, or the primary example of what Koheles was talking about, where you had an opportunity to do a mitzvah and the mitzvah went away. Specifically, this mitzvah you had 8 days to do it, missed it. You snooze, you lose, and therefore this is that which is crooked, you can't make straight, and that which was missing, you can't be counted. You can't make it up again.
Why doesn't use it? I remember learning of Resmani Batal Kabbalah.
Correct. Well,
that would be a better. I don't know. I'm just asking.
Right.
This is exactly what you're doing.
Correct, but I guess they wanted to be a homily here to bring across the point what it is. This is the latter two Mishnayos of the Perek are become somewhat homiletic or somewhat darshanic in terms of values outside of the Masechta. So this could be, you'll see the next Mishnah is going to talk about things that don't have a basis in the Torah, things that are the haring tolim al, they're like mountains that are hanging on a dot or something. So this becomes maybe another example. Or the Mishnah tended to tie it into Koheles. It's a more forceful kind of statement. Saying over is mano bato kabano is not the same as saying that you messed up and you can't fix it. Okay. That's a more strict thing.
Okay.
So Rabbi Shimon Menashe what is that which is crooked, which you can't straighten up? There's someone who had relations with a non-Jew, with an incestuous relationship, and a mamzer was born from that. So the mamzer status can't be undone if it's a real mamzer, okay? And therefore that's what is crooked, which you can make straight. Otherwise, you could do tshuva. Otherwise, you could separate. Otherwise, you could break up, so to speak. But the fact that this erva has now become pregnant and gives birth to a mamzer, that mamzer status is indelible, correct, and that remains forever. So, so with the Mishnah, what Rabbi Shimon is saying, is this is a better example. Well, this is what the pasuk is talking about. The fact that you didn't bring a korban in the right time, that's not move us. That's a missed opportunity. Not really crooked. right? Not really missing. Yeah, you missed it. Okay, but you missed other mitzvahs too, right? As Archie said, it could have said Avars Mano, but the Kabbalah. The time has passed; it's gone. So that which has to be related to something which is erroneous, which is of course, right? Sexual relationships with an incestuous relationship is wrong. By the way, the implication is that simply ba'ala erva without holy minimums is not so bad. And you could say, well, yeah, it's true, because there was no progeny, right? So the Gemara will actually talk about that and raise that question, not necessarily in a value statement, but could it not be considered that if you entered into an ancestral relationship, that in and of itself is muvas leichal lesko? And the Mishnah, however, says in Tomar Begone Begozel, if you say it's about stealing hiddenly and stealing openly, Yachalu Lachziro Mitakein, you could actually return it back. Okay. The answer is yes. There are implications about stealing and things, right? Okay. Anyone who's ever had anything stolen from them knows the angst that you have, even if it gets returned. Correct. By the way, there are certain things called takanas hashavim. For example, the Gemara talks about the fact that if a robber steals a big beam and puts the beam as the cross beam of his house, so that the only way to return the cross beam is the guy to dismantle his house, right? So something called takanas hashavim, to allow the person to do repentance, we allow him to pay it off. Right? He doesn't have to bring, because normally it is the actual item, the item is extended. The only time we allow a robber to pay back is if it's no longer here. It got burned, it got destroyed. But the takanas hashavim. But anyway, so you get paid back for your stolen beam, so that you can make it up. Okay, so. Now, Rav Shimon Yochai Omar, Ein Koren Muvas El Michshay Mitukam Betchila B'Nesaves. What's considered crooked? That which was straight before. The fact that a person sinned is not really called crooked. It means they just sinned. But it means if a person always was a ganaf, that's his straightness. Right? It's, normal. I don't know. You used to grow up with this as a kid. Minorities would claim that they lived in poverty and they can't be blamed for it, and the father ran away, and this was a society, and they right, and they plead this to the judge. I don't know. Am I saying something? Maybe this was down in the States in the height of I don't know.
No, for sure.
Whatever. But the bottom line was there's a little bit tzedek to say that the kid wasn't raised in a proper environment, doesn't know right from wrong, and therefore one has. But at any rate, there says Rosh Mechai, to be considered muvas, that you're really crooked off and ruined, you have to start out straight. There's a scholar who actually turned away from the Torah. He was right, and he knew better, and he went away from the Torah itself. That's called mu'uvas. So the term mu'uvas doesn't refer to anyone who simply strays, who did know better, right? That's simply referring to someone who was good and became poor. Okay. The example, by the way, this kind of person in the Gemara, I think I said this we did the Mishnah first time, is Rav Shimon Reish Lakish. Reish Lakish, we believe, knowing upon the history, and I feel where it comes up, was actually a scholar, became a highwayman, and eventually returned to marry Rav Yochanan's sister. Okay, but he was not just a highwayman all his life. He had been good and straight, and then he was able to return. Okay. In fact, I think the story with Rav Yochanan is Rav Yochanan says return. In other words, he's those who may remember the story is they're in the river, and Reish Lakish is wearing all his armaments, all his swords and daggers, and he says, return and I'll let you marry my sister, who's more beautiful than me. Okay, because Rabbi Yochanan was handsome, and he says yes, and he couldn't get out. He couldn't get out of the water.
He was heavy.
Because when you turn to Torah weakens you physically. So the fact that he even just made the commitment to turn to Torah and marry Rabbi Yochanan's sister means that the whole story of Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish.
No, I'm talking about getting weak, though. I mean,
right. But the whole stories of Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan are very, very difficult stories. How they couldn't get along, and you prayed for him, and didn't pray for him. Yeah. Okay. Okay, anyways, so we're going to flip over now to Tetamad Bet. We're at the 2 dots. It's about 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13 lines from the top on Tetamad Bet. Right? And this goes to this part of the Mishnah about Muvas Leichalitka. Ravar Regav Lochog, Enachai Bachriyuta, Vazenema Muvas Leichalitkon, Vechesron Lo Yichal Lihimanos. Okay? Right.
So they're saying that that's an example of the Kohelet's comment, right?
Correct. So Amalei ben Hey Hey Lahillel. Okay, now ben Hey Hey. Well, we have ben Hey Hey. We have ben Hey Hey with Hey Aleph in Pirkei Avos. It's not Hey Yud. It's the same guy. We also have in Pirkei Avos ben Bagbag. Okay, so.
There's a reason. I forget it has to do.
So Tosas here says the reason. In fact, I recall once the Rav used this in Pirkei Avos. He said that Ben Hey Hey, because we don't know anything about Ben Hey except this Gemara and the Gemara and the Mishnah Pirkei Avos was a ger. Okay, and the reason he called himself Ben Hey Hey from the additional Hey given to Avraham and Sarah. So all Tosas here says this. Second Tosas on page. Bar Hey Hey Amar Bar Hey Lahillel Yesh Mefarshim Shiger Haya V'Hainu Ben Avraham V'Sara Shenitosav Hey B'Shmam. Okay, so Hey 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 for Avraham, from Avram to Avraham, and Sarai to Sarah. V'Chein Ben Bagbag. And then Tosas says Ben Bagbag is the same guys because Bay and Hey the Kula Gemara Ola Hey. The Ben Bagbag who's found in another place in the Gemara is equals Hey Beis and Gimel is Hey. It's a Gematria Tosfos. So it's the same guy. Same guy. He had two aliases, Ben Bagbag and Ben Hey Hey. Okay, I think Tosfos means the same guy. Not just that this was another ger. I think it means the very same guy. And in fact, we don't have mentioned that frequently around. Okay, so which would make sense that this would be a ger. First, we speak to Hillel. We know that Hillel is the type of person who attracted ger, who gerim were accepted to Hillel. A lot of stories about teach me Torah while I'm standing on one foot and so forth. That's a Hillel story. And second, the fact that the type of question he's asking is about a person doing a mitzvah, not doing a mitzvah. These are kinds of things that people who would join Judaism, the whole concept of being required to do a mitzvah, not doing it, would be very alien to someone who's coming from a Greek or Roman culture or Gentile culture. So Amalei Hey Lahillel. Hi Lehimanos. When Kohelet says v'chesron lo yuchal lehimanos to be counted lehimalos mibayelei. Okay, it says it shouldn't say it said that which is missing can't be filled up. It should say not be counted. In other words, Kohelet seems to use the wrong verb. Right? That which is crooked you can't make straight. That's the opposite. That which is missing you can't fill up. Right. That which is empty you can't make full. Chesron, chaser, masha chaser, can't become malay. Right. That's what it should be. Instead, Kohelet says that which is chaser, you can't be moneh.
Right. I don't agree with that, but I'm keeping quiet.
Good. All right.
I don't agree with it, but I'm keeping quiet.
We're going to let Ben Hey squeeze through on this one.
Okay.
So therefore, it says Ben Hey or Bar Hey says to Hillel. So it's not really dealing with I don't know, this and an erva or a missing bringing karbanos. Elazeh sheminu chachamim lidvar mitzvah. When it says lehimanos, it means that you're missing the opportunity to be included in a group of people who are doing a mitzvah. V'hu lo nimna imahem. So if there were people who were doing a mitzvah, he elected not to be part of this group, and therefore he was chaser, and he was not part of mihimanos.
So counted among those who did it.
Right. So in other words, we all have opportunities where we fall down and we don't do mitzvah. But this was a group, right, a peer group, who were exerting pressure. They're all going to do a mitzvah together. What the mitzvah is not very clear. It's not important. And he decided that nonetheless, even though there was a push to kind of do the mitzvah, he's not going to do the mitzvah. Okay? This is going?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Tanya nami hachi. And the Gemara says there's a brisa that says the same thing as Bar Hey Hey, that says Me'uvas loichal liskon zeh shebito kriyash mashal shachris or kriyash mashal arvis or shebito tefillah shel shachris or tefillah shel arvis. He missed out saying kriyash ma, missed out saying marav, he missed out saying daven shachris, missed out saying marav. You can't. That's called Me'uvas loichal liskon. He was crooked. He didn't do the right thing. I guess it's not the same. I don't know. It's a good question. I don't know. Maybe Tashlumin is not the same as doing the original mitzvah. First, we can't do Tashlumin for Kriyashma.
No. But he says here for the Tefillah Shel Shachris and Tefillah Shel Arvis.
So here's my pshatel answer. Yeah. It's already past the next Tefillah. The only time we can do Tashlumin is so it means he didn't do Shachris, he didn't do Marav. We didn't do Marav, didn't do Shachris. And then he realized when the next day later he wants to do back, it's too late to do it. Okay, there's a good answer. The chesvan lo yichal limanos, and the Brisa brings the second half of the pasuk which we're talking about. Zes shenimna chaver ledvar mitzvah v'hu lo nimna imahem. Okay, so actually we have a Brisa that says the same thing that Bar Hei said to Hillel. It looks probably contemporary, except the Brisa is of more validity or more significance. And this was simply Bar Hei, who was an individual. He was, you see, he's not even a Rav. It's not Rav Bar Hei. It's just Bar Hei.
Yeah, maybe he remembered this Brisa. He'd heard it once.
Maybe. Or maybe
He just forgot where he heard it.
Or I would suggest it's the other way around. He had said it, and it became incorporated into the learnings of the Brises that then included this. Okay?
I'll go along with you.
Good. Now, having said one thing, we put another thing from Bar Hei along the same thing about what's a tzaddik, what's not a tzaddik. Amalai Bar Hei lehillel. My dechsiv. What does the pasuk say in Malachi? V'shavtem urisem bein tzaddik l'rasha bein oved elokim l'asher lo avado. You'll return and you'll see the difference between a tzaddik and a rasha, between a person who serves God and a person who doesn't serve Him. So the question that Bar Hei asks is, what's the difference between tzaddik and rasha versus oved elokim and lo oved elokim? It's the same thing. Isn't a tzaddik and oved elokim, and isn't a rasha oved elokim? So, and the pasuk is obviously seems to be saying this. Look at the difference between a tzaddik, the guy who does the word of God and doesn't do the word of God. The word of God and doesn't do it twice. So he says, Hainu tzaddik, Hainu oved elokim, Hainu rasha, Hainu asher lo avado. Pasuk saying the same thing twice. So what's the answer? He says, or Amalei, this probably Hillel says back to Bar Hei, Avado v'lo avado, tarvayu tzadiki gemiri ninhu. When it says serve and not serve, it doesn't mean serve completely and not serve completely. It means serve more and serve less. Or and you'll see the example. The difference is almost imperceptible. No, Rasha and a tzaddik is clear, black and white. That's that's clear what it means. There's a Rasha, a tzaddik. Serve and not serve means one served a little more, you got a much greater reward. And what are we talking about? The amount of time that you learn and study and review the amount of what you have. So the Gemara says, Avada v'lavada travay tzadiki k'mirinim, the both tzadikim, v'eino doma shona pirko mea palmim, l'shona pirko mea v'echad. But there's no difference between a person who studies 100 times to a person who reviews it 101 times. Now, it sounds, of course, like a minuscule amount, and the answer is, of course, it is.
There is or there isn't a difference? There is yes a difference, or there's not a difference?
There is. Another person who studies 101
is better.
It's like super better.
Yeah, I got it.
So it's not like it's just an aggregate number. It's not arithmetically increasing. It becomes
order of magnitude.
Right.
Parabolic?
Yeah.
Logarithmic.
Yeah.
What's the dimension?
The quotes here from the Kutzker Rebbe, they says the difference is, and this of course the Pichasidus, maybe a Jewish, that when you have 100 plus 1 of course represents the singularity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Okay? So when you of course single something out and you represent your learning, you learned it 100 times, and one more for you, God, you're kind of identifying with God. The whole 100 times you did before are raised to a spiritual level equal to the one, the Yichudah Shalom. Okay, so that's why the Kutzker Rebbe says it's called Oved Elokim and Lo Avado. Because the person who actually studies 101 is identified with Elokim, and the previous 100 times it's Oved Elokim. The one who only did 100.
Serving, actually.
Correct.
Next one.
Now, how closely did they count 100? Right? How many times? What does that mean? So it's not clear, But what it really says. What it really says is that the more you learn it is not simply just an additional piece. Okay. Another pshat he says is that a person, when it says 100 plus 1, it means like 100. When you start again the 1, you're starting again from the beginning. It's like a second cycle. So somehow 100 becomes like a number of completion. Like we use it a completion for the decimal system. So once you finish 100, now you're going around the second time. It's like saying to a person, they're learning Daf Yomi. What are you going to do when you finish Daf Yomi? I'll do it a second time. Now they say, actually, what do you do when you finish Daf Yomi? Then I'll actually begin to learn. Okay. But the second time around, it's an aggregate number, or Balkori. The first time the Balkori goes through all the whole Torah. It's very difficult. The second time around, it's not simply doing it a second time, because you have the whole ball of wax of what laning is and all the Chamisha Chumshin Torah, and you've seen different styles, it becomes infinitely more easy to do it the second time. It's not just simply a second crack at it. Right? It's probably
level.
Right. It's probably like that anything that you think about. But so they're viewing 100 as completion of the entire task. Doesn't mean completion. I mean, you've completed 100 times, but the fact that you chose 100 is the round number that refers to completion. The bottom line is that if you study it, you can never study it too much.
That's for sure.
The more you study it, the clearer it becomes in your mind. Right? There's the Balatanya in Shulchan Aruch Harav talks about what happens a person forgets learning. Like
Forget what you learned.
Forget what you learned, right? And the Baal Tanya actually has a very unusual shita. We normally say that if you learn, we ask you tomorrow what you learn, you forget. You say, "Oh, that's Rahman Patria. It's not my fault. I forgot it. I wanted to remember. My brain just kind of does. It's just got a poor memory."
Yeah.
So the Baal Tanya says, "Not true. You're actually supposed to study until you're sure you remember it. Until you go ahead." And inevitably, inevitably, it's like saying if you study the multiplication tables when you were a kid, you still remember 4 times 4 is 16. It's never going to go out of your head because you did it again. Did it in 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th. So these kind of things which are basic knowledge, it's ground in. You say, I don't know, 5 by 5, 5 times 5, boom, you say 25. You don't even think. So, and the answer is because you've reviewed it. The same thing says about Tanya. You got to make sure you know things before you move ahead. A very unusual shita. Forgot.
What gives a hint?
What about the
But
if you pick up if you
They do, so they say that somebody who learns fast and forgets fast, the person who learns fast and absorbs forever, and that's a good portion.
Well, they have one is like a sieve, and one is also very obvious, but still.
So we forget. But I'm saying, but about Tanya says you have to try everything to make sure you don't forget. It means you never get ahead. Right? I mean, think about it. Means if we were to go back now and look at the beginning of Masechet Chagiga or Masechet whatever Masechet we did before this, right? We'd have pieces we wouldn't remember.
Sounds like you actually remember.
I don't remember which Masechet we did before Chagiga.
No, but I
was
feel
kidding.
bad. Every Shabbos I read a bunch of commentaries, and I really like what they are, and then I maybe remember a little bit or two, and then I sometimes put it aside. So after Shabbos, I might take a few notes.
Also has to be age.
So the answer
You come to those same comments and say, "Wow, that's really something." Listen to you.
Yeah.
And the answer is, why don't we do this? Because it's not intellectually stimulating. Part of what we do by learning is we're part really of the Torah. We're not making the Torah, but by stimulating our brain, we are receiving the Torah once again. If you get something and say, "Oh, that's a great chap, that's a great idea," it makes sense to you that you've now rediscovered or discovered maybe the first time something that you hadn't really thought about. We all have that experience. So you can imagine sitting with the same piece and again, mentally we'd stop concentrating. So the Baal Tanya's approach, while it's commendable, right, would A, slow us down, and B, would be very impractical. But anyways, if you want to look, it's in the Shulchan Aruch Rav Hilchos Talmud Torah. It's very beginning. Okay. No, I don't suggest you practice it at all. Okay. So at any rate, it says Hillel back to Bar Hei that there's a difference between a Oved Elokim and Lo Oved Elokim. Is there between someone who studies 100 times to a person who studies and reviews his parak, is learning 101. So Amalei, so he said back to him, this is probably Bar Hei saying to Hillel, he has trouble understanding this. Umishum chadzimna karle lo avado. All right, because he didn't study one extra time, he's considered like not good enough. How much of a difference is there between 100 and 101? It sounds like there's suddenly a jump. So Amalei, so this probably Hillel says back to him, yes. Say l'lamad mishuk shel chamarim. This is like fairs. Look at the marketplace where they sell donkey drivers. You pay asara parsei bezuzei chad. I'm sorry, bezuzei. 10 parcels, you pay 1 zuz. Chanasar parsei, but 3 zuz. You go 11, it's already the next fair zone, it becomes 2 zuzei. So it's not comparable, and that's probably with anything. There are certain minimum standards, then you jump up to the next. Right, it's the next stage. Right? I mean, it's like, do you pay by the minute on your long distance service, by 6 seconds, by whatever you pay by? Right? There are all kinds of plans.
Take a taxi from the airport. It's like a certain zones, and when you cross the second zone, it's a whole other jump.
Right. Yeah. So at any rate, does this really have to deal with Chesed L'Ichal Limanos? Not exactly. Right. It's brought here really because it's Bar Hei Hei to Hillel, Bar Hei Hei to Hillel. Now, seeing that we got Bar Hei Hei to Hillel, we have another story, Bar Hei Hei without Hillel. Because Bar Hei Hei doesn't really appear in the Gemara. And he's speaking to, of all people, Eliyahu. Okay. Amalei Eliyahu Bar Hei Hei.
Yeah, Eliyahu initiates the conversation, sounds like.
Right. The Amalei Rabbi Lazar. Some say it wasn't Bar Hei, it was Rabbi Lazar. Okay. But it seems that it's definitely Eliyahu. My Nechsiv, in fact, it's a kind of funny story because it looks like he should be asking Eliyahu. My Nechsiv, right? My Nechsiv, maybe the second version is Bar Hei Hei is asking Rabbi Lazar. I don't know. My Nechsiv is what's the pasuk in Yeshayahu? Hinei tziraftich v'lo bekesef b'chartich b'kur oni. Tziraftich means I purified you, right? I refined you, but I didn't refine you with silver. B'chartich, I chose you b'kur oni in the smelting pot of poverty. Right? So this is how Yeshayahu is talking about the Jewish people. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I refined you, not physically refined you, I spiritually refined you, not silver. And I chose you, I didn't choose you by choosing the silver ingot out of the core, out of the smelting pot. I chose you by giving you anius, by giving poverty. Okay, this is, by the way, something that I think was one of the statements of Tevye in Fiddler on the Roof. Okay, no, I believe so. HaKadosh Baruch Hu looked around for all the great, wonderful character attributes, and he only found anius. The Amar Shmuel. Elanias. Amar Shmuel Vitema Rav Yosef Hainu the Amriyinchi Ya Anvenusa Lihudai or Aniusa. The Anius, being poor, is great, is wonderful, or is befitting the Jewish people. Ki Barza Sumka L'Susaya Chiurta. Like a Barza is a strap, Sumka is red, to a white horse. White horse has a red strap. That kind of stands out. So that we are blessed so much with this poverty. This was the sign of the Jewish people. This is the Tevye sign. This is the Tevye line. Like, God, why did you bless us?
Yeah.
So this is actually where it comes from.
This is not helpful.
Well,
especially in the Middle Ages with the Goyim. Yeah, this is where here. You can say it yourself. I don't know.
So the question really. What does this mean? What kind of gift?
Because I have to be honest, I always looked at the Christians said, the poverty, like even the priests, they have to take these vows of poverty. In other words, they thought being poor was some big yichus.
Suffering. It has to do with suffering.
What?
It has to do with suffering.
Yeah, but I don't.
That's the thing. When you're suffering,
I never considered that. I thought.
I don't think it's a Jewish idea.
People said this is. It's nothing good about being poor or suffering.
So actually, this is the one that Tevye says. Why, God, did you bless us with me? Why couldn't you make me rich? And then he goes, if I want rich.
At the beginning, he said, it's no disgrace to be poor, but it's no great honor either.
So what does it really mean? Okay, so there are a couple of things that the Mepharshim say. First of all, they say that one of the worst traits is to be brazen and arrogant.
Absolutely.
Right. This was HaKadosh Baruch Hu's preventative measure. Right, to ensure that we wouldn't become brazen because we don't have the fiscal ability to say that because we're poor. So as a people, there are always richer and poorer people. As a people, this kind of reduces our azut. This reduces our arrogance when we see how difficult it is to make a living. Second of all, that people many times are not satisfied with the riches that they have. Misha yesh lo mana rotza matayim. Person has 100, wants 200. People die and they don't have half the things they want. And it's really true. You look at these movie stars, you look at these performers, you look at these people who have gazillions of dollars, and they're not sameach, right? Their marriages are shambles, their families are shambles, they're just going from one thing to the other. So this was a way for us to recognize that this is not the path to seek rich. You have to be rich, fine, wonderful. It's not bad, as Tevye says. But it means don't say that you're going to devote your life to getting riches, because it's not so bad to be poor as well, and this is what happens to you. So you may as well be satisfied with what you have. Okay? People wonder, does money bring happiness? And the answer is it actually brings happiness, but a lot of money brings a little bit of happiness.
No, after a certain amount. After you're not starving and you have what you need, more money doesn't make you more happy.
So it makes you a little bit happy. In other words, it's hard to say it doesn't make you happy, but the amount of happiness is...
It's like diminishing returns. We learn diminishing returns.
On the other hand, main kamach.
Right. The other thing some of the Rishonim say is it's meant to kind of console us that don't think, as Tevye said, don't think that being poor is a disgrace. Look, the Gemara is trying to take something here which is a whip and put it on the horse, and it kind of lends honor to the horse. So even if you're poor, there's a certain amount of honor that goes. It's not a disgrace to be poor as well. Now, one of the Rishonim says that it's not to be read here as anius, but anivus.
Anivus. Anivus.
Exactly. Humility. Okay.
Anivus is humility, and it's true.
It's hard to, you know what? It's hard to.
Nobody says he was poor.
No, it's hard to.
Just he's brought up in the palace.
If you're really rich, it's hard to have an evil, in my opinion.
The luchas which were broken. No, there's a meditation.
That's what they say, yeah?
They took
the broken luchas.
The stones.
The stones, and he was rich on the road.
Yeah.
What do you mean? Like sold them?
You say you could sell even one little tiny piece.
Some on eBay.
More than the first luchas were made by Hashem, not just the
I thought they went into the iron. Broken luchas went into the iron.
Some places say
no, I thought so.
But you could
say eBay. You like the eBay one better. eBay's better.
Well, at any rate, okay. So that's the easiest shot. That doesn't really appear to be. The shot.
Okay. Anivus would be very good. How would you spell Anivus?
You see, essentially it's a mida tova.
I mean, humility.
I would describe humility as being a mida.
I like what you say.
Poverty,
yeah.
It's an
It's not a meter. It's not a meter, right?
It's not a mida.
It's not a mida. Where does it say mida?
It's hard. You know,
the beginning of the first wide line, you got different format. The first wide line. Kol midas tovos. Chazak is Baruch HaShem. Kol midas tovos.
No, the first line.
Right.
So mida.
It's hard to be humble if you're not humble. Humility. If you're really rich.
How would you spell Anivus? Is it need two vowels?
What happened another vav? Yes, what happened another vav?
They're not incompatible.
Right.
Just a scribal error there.
And humble. Absolutely.
Not the norm, I don't think.
No, it's not the record.
Okay.
It's not
In fact, you could argue as soon as we were given a chance, we did rather well economically.
Take Trump. Isn't he humble?
It doesn't go. In my opinion, it doesn't go.
Right now,
normally.
one more pshat from Vilna Gaon. The Vilna Gaon says that this is about acting in public. That when we act in public, we should be humble and unassuming. And the Vilna Gaon says it's exactly the mashal to the horse. Look, when the horse is in the stable, they don't put on the fancy schmancy lashing or bracelet or whatever they put on, strap. When they take the horse out to march in the parade, or they bring it to the palace, and they want to show it off, you have this white horse, you want to offset the whiteness with this red strap that kind of is an accent, like a piece of jewelry, like a piece of that.
So
when a Jew, how you behave in privately, you should feel like a king. When you are out in public,
you shouldn't flaunt your wealth.
You shouldn't flaunt your wealth. You should be simple. Okay?
They're going, that's reasonable. That would be a good meeting.
So at any rate, but this...
Unlike a lot of Jews today, but yeah.
Correct. That's right.
I'll tell you a story later.
Unless it's exempt.
At any rate, this is the Gemara that Tevye had learned. Okay, this is what the Gemara says. Look, it probably is Anias, not Anivus. Okay, just what do we know about? But at any rate, Okay, so this is all the bar hey-heys. Okay, 1, 2, 3. The first of the 3 was related to Me'uvas. The other 2 were just schlepped along because of who he was, or because we have all the bar hey gemars together. Okay, good. Questions? Let's move ahead. Holy, Rav Shimon bar Menashe Omer Zeh Muvas Leichal Liskon Zehaba Ala Erva V'Holid B'Mena Mamzer. Okay, so we said that before. The implication of the Gemara is, and I told you we did the mission of the Gemara is going to ask this: Holid in, lo holid lo. Okay, that if you have a mamzer child.
I have a question, like Rabbi.
That's a question.
Lo holid lo.
I'm sorry, man. Holid in, lo holid lo. Right. Okay. I would read as a period, and then they ask the question. It's the same thing. Means the implication is, the drash is, or the limud is, that if you give birth to a mamzer, that's muvas leichal liskon. If you didn't give birth to a mamzer, everything is fine and dandy. Okay, so the Gemara has a brisa which seems to give an example where having relations with a woman who's prohibited to you is going to have an effect that can't be undone. Okay, the Gemara says, which means it's not just having a mamzer, not just having a child, even when there's no progeny. The Hatanya, Rav Shimon Nasi Omer, Rav Shimon Nasi himself says, the very same person who talks about giving birth to a mamzer being muvas l'zleichal eskan, you can't change it, has another brayso which says, Gonev Adam, Efshe Yash Yachzir Gneivo V'Yisakein, a person who steals a person who kidnaps someone can return. They return it and fix things up. Goes el adam efshe shiachzir gzaylo v'yitakin. Even a person who brazenly steals can return it. Aval haba aleishas ish v'asara lebala nitrad min ha'olam v'halachla. But a person who has relations with a married woman, she will become prohibited to her husband, and therefore he is, so to speak, removed from the world. He's gone. He's finished. You can't undo that. So in other words, if a married woman is mizana, well, we'll see it means willingly. Okay, so this is something that can't be fixed. It doesn't say muvas leichal liskan, but use the term nitrad min ha'olam v'holechlo. He is worked out of the world. There's no tshuva to do. There's no refuah. There's nothing can help the person. He's just finished. He's gone. He's a goner, so to speak. So that's one part of the brisa, and that's actually where the Gemara is going to ask the question from. Rav Shimon bar Yochai ben Yochai Omer, Ein Omer Bikro Gamal Bikro Chazir, Ela Bikro Tle. We don't say Bikro is like, I guess, Bikro is to count. Bring as a carbon. Bring as a carbon a camel, or bring as a carbon a chazir. Ela Bikro Tle. But we say, bring as a carbon a sheep. Tle is a sheep? Tle is a sheep.
So now I'm confused. What's he saying? You bring a gamal or you bring a chazir?
I didn't explain correctly. Bikro means levaker, means to check out. Right. Bikro means to examine, investigate. Or levaker means to make a visit, but an intense visit. Right. To visit. So it doesn't say investigate a gamal. Doesn't say investigate a chazir. You investigate an animal to make sure there's no mum, there's no deformity, right? If you have a gamal and it has a deformity, you don't really care as long as it works. Does it work? It doesn't work, right? It's what we call cosmetic, a cosmetic deformity on the gamal. Who cares? Right. But on a tle, on a sheep, if you're bringing it as which could be as a carbon, you want to check it out, to investigate it, to visit every piece of the animal to make sure that it is okay. Which means that which is more significant and holy is subject to greater scrutiny. Okay. So what does that have to do with anything? So therefore, when it says "Me'uvas leichal liskan," we're checking out this person who became crooked, means it was a person of significance. What do we care that he got crooked? Everybody gets crooked. Everybody makes mistakes. We're talking about a person who was really like the tle. He was like a carbon. He was holy to God. He was a Talmud Chacham. The Eza Zed Talmud Chacham Sheporesh or Piresh Min Torah. Okay? Which is really the third opinion within our Gemara, within our Mishnah. Right. So far we haven't gotten to the question. The question is going to come from the first line, which is Rav Shimon ben Menashe. Okay. Now, one more piece of the brisa. This now explains the piece of Rav Shimon bar Yochai. Rabbi Yehuda ben Lakish Omer, Kol Talmud Chacham Shepirish Min Torah. Any scholar who leaves Torah, like a person, like I guess Acher, is Elisha ben Avuya is the most notable story, right? Who turns as a student of Rabbi Meir, right? So Allah v'kasav Omer Kitzipor nodedet min hakana Kain ish noded mimkomo. Like a bird who wanders away from its nest, which then can't find it back. Right? It got too far and can't retrace its steps. So too, it means baby birds. They don't fly. When they fall out of the nest, they have to walk back up. They can't. So a person who wanders away from his place. This is from Mishlei, also written by Shlomo Melech. Mishlei also depressing and talking about life and events and so forth. The Omer, and another pasuk which says something similar. Ma motzvavot seichem bi avel ki richaku me'alai. What says Yirmiyahu? What did your ancestors find in me sin that they became far away from me? So once again, talking about becoming far or becoming different from what they were, this is referring to once again they were followed Hashem, and Yirmiyahu is talking about the fact that they turned away from Hashem and now worshiping idols. What it means, it goes back to an era. They were good, now they became bad. The same thing when we're talking about we're talking about a person who was righteous, a Talmud Chacham. He became krum, he became wrong, went off the derech.
Is that an old?
Avel.
Avel? It's not old like an old Malchus man? Like a burden?
No, I think
like a yoke. Yeah, a yoke. Yeah.
Is it? I think Avel is that which is wrong.
Uh-huh.
I don't know, we'll look it up in Yirmiyahu Bet. Okay. Avel is always like a sin.
I'm looking it up here. Yirmiyahu, I'm looking the English.
Right. Should be the bottom.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Avel is definitely a bad thing. How did we do that?
See, it should be the end of your English. It's just the last two lines of the.
Oh, look up here. Sorry. What can I tell you? Hebrew's okay. The English is not good.
Right.
What righteous have
the pasuk from the year.
Yeah. What?
Sorry, I just want to find.
What did your ancestors find in me?
Yeah. What righteousness have your fathers found in me that they are gone?
What unrighteousness, maybe?
Sorry, what unrighteousness?
Okay.
That they are gone far from me.
Great.
Yeah, so unrighteousness, that's...
Right, it's not related to all, it's Avel. Okay.
Isn't old spelled the same?
Yes, it is. But there's a pasuk in Yirmiyahu. Is it Haftorah, one Haftorah is from before Tisha B'Av?
You can look it up in a dictionary if you want.
Avel. We have Yirmiyahu Perek Aleph, which is... I don't know. I bet it's one. I bet it's one of Torahs before Tisha B'Av. Okay. All right. At any rate, so this is basically a brisa that's very similar to our Mishnah, including bringing down the Pei Shem Ben Yochai that has to be a Talmud Chacham. But the question of the Gemara is, Rav Shimon ben Menasya didn't use the term Muvas L'Nichaliskan, but it says it's Nitrad Min Ha'olam, person has relationships with an Eishes Ish. But that's about relations, right? It's not about having a child. So the Gemara said, and our Mishnah said, what's Muvas L'Nichaliskan? Yeah, you had relations with an Erva and you gave birth to a mamzer. Right? So one needs a mamzer, one doesn't need a mamzer. So the Gemara says, Lokasha, kan ba'achos pnuya, kan be'eshes ish. The difference is if you have relations with an Erva, that's your single sister. Right? So there's no, sounds funny, but there's no lasting disability if you have relations with your sister and then you separate. There's no, she doesn't become prohibited. Unless the only thing could be if there is a mamzer brought from that union, then the mamzer is punished. It's one of the very difficult halachas of the Torah.
With the kid.
Correct, exactly. On the other hand, kan be'eshes ish, on the other hand, having relations with a married woman willingly will prohibit her from her husband. Right?
Yeah. And he said that before that we read a few lines up. He said what the problem was, right? Asar ala bala.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
It sounded more like the problem was
correct.
That,
So erva refers to a woman who is prohibited to you. Some arayos are prohibited by virtue of who they are. Some are prohibited by virtue of the relationship. So your sister is an incestuous relationship. Married women, see, our society makes a difference. A married woman is considered an incestuous relationship. It's considered one of the arayot. Is an erva, but only by virtue of her being married to someone else. Right? But there's the same kind of prohibition.
But they're both liable to karet, surely.
Yes. Okay. Fine. Okay. But in terms of doing tshuva, whatever it is, their person can still do tshuva even with kares. So kan bachos apnei kan bachos beishish. Vi ba'isema. Second answer. Okay. Can be honest for Kambaratson. Say, he doesn't have to be sister and married woman. Both cases could be married woman. One case was where she was involved in a relationship against her will, and one was where she willingly was involved in the relationship. Okay.
And in which case, what were we saying?
So where she is involved against her will, she's not prohibited to her husband.
Right. So then it's still not a good thing, but it's
right. But then
but you can straighten that out. So
correct.
The guy can straighten it out.
Right. This is the statement of Esther when she says to Mordechai, "I'm going to go into the king." When she says, she says, "I haven't been called for 30 days. I'm going to go into the king." What does mean going into the king means I'm going to go into the king and be intimate with him. What's the big deal? Same way that I've been lost to the people, I'm separate here in the palace, I'm now lost to you, Mordechai, because in the Medrash, Mordechai is not simply her uncle, it's a husband. Yeah. And until now, I could say that I was ba'ones. Right now, I have to willingly give myself to Achashverosh. So
but in strict halacha, could a man not forgive his wife, or could he not? In strict halacha...
What's the question?
If your wife had relations...
In strict halacha, he can divorce his wife for any reason he wants.
No, but let's say he didn't want to divorce her, I'm saying.
Oh, if you wanted to take her back.
It says navad leish.
You can't. Right? I don't think you can.
So what does that mean? What do you mean? So
no, if his wife had an affair,
what's forgive?
Can you take her back?
He forgives her and says, no.
Oh, can he actually take her back if she willingly? I think not. I think not. I think halachically not. Okay. It's very complicated.
Because we know in today's world for sure it would happen. I guess if nobody knew publicly, he could do what he wants, right? But
that's right. So this has to be prosecuted and so forth. Correct. But I believe you had witnesses.
Probably you have to, like your Rabbi says, you have witnesses in all business.
Right. There's a whole Masechta called Masechet Sota.
Yeah, right, absolutely. But that's where the implication is that the guy's suspicious, etc. I'm looking at the opposite case.
So I believe she's also, Jim. I believe she becomes prohibited to her husband from a halachic point of view, without dealing with modern society.
No, but I'm saying even that's sort of interesting because, if anything, as you can see here, the problem in the case we just read is she's prohibited to her husband. That sounds like a punishment to the husband. In a way, because it says, look what you've done, the guy who slept with her, let's say, you've messed up.
He gets punished for something he wasn't done.
That's what I'm saying. You're saying,
in the old days,
because it says that they did.
But he doesn't have to pay the ksuba. Think of the good news.
I understand. Because it says if she does it unwillingly, it's not a problem. So
she does it unwillingly, she's considered not responsible.
Yeah, we agreed that she's not, but we're saying the guy who slept with her in the first place, we're saying he's in big trouble. Why is he in big trouble? Well,
he might have to marry her.
So so the reason
what you're saying is, of course, what people are pointing that there's an inequity that she becomes prohibited to her husband, he doesn't become prohibited to his wife.
No, it sounds like he does.
The rapist or
No, but we just said that was I was asking you halachically. Is she prohibited to him? Does he have to give her up?
That's true.
It's a good movie girl, and she made a mistake. And she's rich, more than me.
And the guy who had relations has to take her, I think. He probably has to take her, no? The guy who had relations with her.
I was just curious about the
I believe so. So anyway, so the first answer is therefore Achoto versus Eshidish. The second answer is Eshidish, Ratzon and Ones. The third answer is V'Ibaisema Hava Ones. V'Lokasha can be Eshid a Kohen, can be Eshid Yisrael. Okay, the second case is where she is married to a Kohen. A Kohen is Asur, even if his wife has relations Anusa. It's a very important halacha, maybe a very difficult halacha. So, and there, by the way, as you probably imagine, there are all kinds of tshuvot that come up, especially in the Middle Ages after pogroms and after all kinds of things go through, right, and so forth. But how, from a simple halachic point of view, an Eishes Kohen is prohibited to her husband even if she was raped, not only if she consented and had consensual sex.
Yeah. Okay. Somebody who hates a Kohen, he just goes.
Yeah. So
of course, he probably sucks.
Can't hit him a lot.
Well, great. Okay. So that would be the third answer. So therefore, if it's an Ashes Kohen, she would be prohibited. If it's an Ashes and not an Ashes, not Kohen, the problem would be if it was against the will, only if a mamzer was created.
Right.
Okay. All right. Kan Ashes Kohen, Kan Ashes Yisrael. Uliyotze ulava ein shalom. This is a pasuk in Zechariah. This really has just kind of like a wrap up to the whole concept of learning Torah, because we had a Talmud Chacham who kind of got messed up. Liotzi laba ein shalom, person goes in and goes out, there's no peace. Amarav, how could this be? What's the matter with going in and going out? What could this refer to? So the Gemara here tries to understand this to be referring to the study of Torah. What study of what? So you're going from one topic of Torah to a different topic of Torah, from a more significant topic of Torah to a less significant, or you haven't really finished exploring one. If you kind of flit around, right? You say, I'll do one pasuk in the Torah, then I'll do one Mishnah, then I'll do one Gemara. Let's spend 1 minute here, 1 minute there. You're left with very little. So Amarav, Kevan Shiyotzi Adam Midvar Halacha Lidvar Mikra Shuv Ein Lo Shalom. A person goes from a halachic source to a Torah source, the Ein Shalom. Because if you really want to understand something, you have to be able to. You can only paskin from a Mishnah, which of course explains what the Torah is. You're going to say, I'm going to leave behind the Mishnayot and go study the Mikra. Okay, so from a study point of view, it's good. From a hora point of view, a psak halacha is of course very negative. You're leaving behind the key value or the key source that we use to paskan halacha, Mishnayos and Gemara and so forth. So you're going to Ein Shalom. Who says this? Rav. Kevin shotzi adam idvar halacha ledvar mikra shuv ein lo shalom. Shalom refers to maybe peace with God, finding oneness with God, finding simplicity in halacha. Ushmul Amar Zeh Paresh mi Talmud leMishnah. It's not just going from Mishnah to Torah; it's even going from Talmud to Mishnah. And of course, you need to understand when they say Talmud, they don't mean holding a Gemara like this. They mean the explanations of the Amorim. This is Shmuel who says this. Rabbi Shmuel, who are the early generations, the first generation of the Amoraim, but nonetheless there are always interpretations and explanations about what the Mishnah said. Right? If you're going to leave those and simply go to the simple Mishnah, you're going to miss the whole purpose of what Hora is. Right? People learn Mishnayos today. And the advantage of learning Mishnayos today sometimes comes, some of the commentaries will tell you what the halacha is. But the truth is, if you just learn Mishnayos, you'll see there are many discrepancies between what the Mishnah says and what halacha comes up. Absolutely. Because, there are different interpretations in other sources as well. So if you're studying Gemara, you're studying the interpretations, leave them. Go to Mishnah, Ein Shalom in terms of coming to halacha psak. Rav Yochanan Amar, Afilu Mishas Lashas. And this is even if you go from one shas to the other shas. So Rashi says this refers to going from shas Yerushalmi to shas Bavli. Okay, why? So Rashi tries to say this is actually, I think, not clear. Let me see what Rashi says. Right. So the Gemara felt that the Yerushalmi was more clear, whereas the Bavli tended to be more expansive and therefore less clear. Now, we know that's what we have in Talmud Yerushalmi seems to be the opposite. But that's really a function of years and centuries of studying Talmud Bavli, which was completed and finished much later in a much more refined fashion than the Talmud Yerushalmi, which seems to finish very precipitously because the Romans closed down learning. So we learn and we study Talmud Bavli, and we don't study Talmud Yerushalmi. You can't study Talmud Yerushalmi, but you'll see that for many hundreds of years, people basically did not study Talmud Yerushalmi. If you study Talmud Yerushalmi, you'll find that the commentaries, who are in many cases Achronim, not even Rishonim, will try to explain the Yerushalmi based upon what they know in the Bavli, because that's what their milieu is. Sometimes it looks similar, sometimes it looks like it's a little bit different. But they don't really have it. We don't have the Masorah. The reason we don't have the Masorah was the Bavli kept being learned and learned and learned. So because it was larger, and it is much larger, it became more refined anytime someone read it. It's like having a set of notes. Think of having a set of notes, and you read someone's notes over, and you see a typing mistake. And you make a little correction. And you see there's something is written as an incomplete sentence. You finish it off. That's what happened with Talmud Bavli. As people learned, they made a more finished product become even more refined and finished. Whereas Talmud Yerushalmi, because it was smaller, because the learning was much more difficult as you get into the 4th century, to about year 350, it stops. So as a result, people did not study it. So therefore, the Talmud Yerushalmi is more complex and more difficult. So for us, going from Bavli to Yerushalmi would be very difficult. You'll see the parallels, but it's clearly not completed. It reads more as a rough set of notes of discussions, whereas the Bavli, because of all these centuries, has made sense. We don't even believe, or we believe that the Rishonim as a group did not even have a Yerushalmi in many cases. They may have had, we know that Rashi refers to Yerushalmi, sometimes Tosos, they may have had excerpts from Yerushalmi, even like Cliff's notes of the Yerushalmi, but we don't believe that many of them even had a full Yerushalmi. So you have hundreds of years where it wasn't learned. However, if you look at statements from the actual Talmudic times, they seem to say the opposite. That the Yerushalmi is the clearer point, and the Bavli is in Olam. I'm wandering in darkness, says the Yerusha, says the Gemara. This is Talmud Bavli. So they have an exact opposite approach. That's what Rashi says, therefore, that if you go from Yerushalmi to Shas Bavli, that's only going to confuse you. Okay? So you just have to understand the milieu, which is, of course, a statement by Rabbi Yochanan, right? And especially Rabbi Yochanan himself lives where? Eretz Yisrael. Rabbi Yochanan is the last great Amor in Eretz Yisrael, so it makes sense that he would say, going from Yerushalmi to Bavli. Now, that's what Rashi says. Tosas says another statement, another way to interpret it is not specific Yerushalmi versus Bavli, but if you're flipping back and forth between different parts of Shas, or you're flipping back and forth between Bavli and Yerushalmi, you're never going to get scholarship over either of them. It's like if you really want to if you really want to know Shakespeare, you've got to take a play of Shakespeare and read the play, study the play. If you're going to read a half an act in this play and read an excerpt of a soliloquy from another play and read, some kind of action scene from a third play, you're not going to become a buck in Shakespeare. You'll have a taste of Shakespeare. So therefore, says Tosas, when it means going from Shas to Shas, doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going from Bavli to Yerushalmi to Bavli, one is better, one is worse. It means I'm going from one style of learning to another style of learning. The language is different. The Aramaic is different. The dialect of Aramaic is different. The Aramaic of Bavel, or let's start the other way around. The Aramaic of Yukum Porkan, right, and the Aramaic of Brich Shmei is different a little bit than the Aramaic of our Gemara. There's some similarities, some words come up again and again. But there are certain differences between the two. The Aramaic of the Yerushalmi is going to be different. It's like saying when you speak to a Jew in Yiddish, and he's a Russian Yid, who's coming from Russia, right? He's going to have Russian words that get thrown in there. And then you and I will have probably English words of some sort that get thrown in there. Or other languages wherever you came from. So the saddest one, Rabbi Yochanan says, jumping from Shas to Shas, it's not just going from Mishnah to Mikra, or Gemara to Mishnah. Even Gemara to Gemara, if you flip around, may even be from one Masechet to another Masechet. Right? You simply just learn a little bit here and say, I learned a little bit Daf Yud, now I'm going to go Daf Chaf. Because I got bored. At the end of the day, you will not have mastery over neither Daf Yud nor Daf Chaf, neither mastery of either of them. So that's what Tosas adds as well, which of course brings equality between the Yerushalmi and the Bavli, and it would make sense even for us today. Okay. He quotes here and he says, this is really trying to explain Rashi, that the Talmud, the Chachmei Eretz Yisrael had better understanding of the Mishnah initially. Later on, because quoting it from the Chazon Ish, later on because people didn't study, and also because the situation became in Eretz Yisrael worse there were poverty, and there was redefot, so things turned around in Bavel. But the initial generations, therefore, the initial connection to the Mishnah, which was also from Eretz Yisrael, was better in the Talmud Yerushalmi than it was in Talmud Bavli. That's what the same thing Rashi says explaining. Okay, so this takes us up to here, which is probably a good place to end. As I told you, the next Mishnah you'll see is a bit of a, I don't know what to say, it's a deals with different topics, right? But for example, it says Heter Nadar Parchim Ba'avir. You see, it deals with a whole bunch of topics about different things. The reason that these list of topics will come up is because one of the listing mentions Chagigot. So it lists all kinds of things that don't really have a basis for them in Torah, and then one of them is Chagiga, and obviously the question the Gemara is going to ask on the entire list is, what do you mean it doesn't have a basis? Sure, it's got a basis. Here's the pasuk. The Gemara says, no, we don't mean the whole thing means this part of what it is doesn't have a basis. But that'll be the next mission. That will take us Yud Aleph, and we'll get us to the end of the first parak. Wow. Okay, good. Okay.